morning, students. My name is Dr. Karel, the lecturer responsible for the module DYD 114T. This module, it deals with working with people in their communities. Today, I would like to tell you about an old man with farming expertise who lived in one of the villages. This man was loved by his employer, who gave him a head of cattle because of his loyalty and dedication to his job. The man's employer passed away. He was so overcome by grief that he decided to move to another village. I think this man, he couldn't cope with the feeling of losing his employer. He then decided to leave, to move from the village, from where he was working, to another village to start a new life there. The chief of that village welcomed him, but he treated him with suspicion. I don't think it was a strange thing. It is because this man was a stranger to the chief. He gave him a plot far from other villagers. The chief was trying to protect his own people to this stranger. The man was experienced and more knowledgeable about farming. He started to use his skill of farming to supply the community of the other village. He started to plow the vegetables, and then he gave them to the community of the other villagers. Due to that kindness, due to that love, the word spread about his skill, and all villagers from that village then decided to move and come and stay with the old man. Let me tell you this. Through this, then the population of the village started to increase from a small number to the highest number. Let's assume that the number ends up being 10,000 people. Now, students, our module, which is the DYD 114T, we have said it is a module that deals with working with people working with persons, with people in their communities. Now, you as a youth worker, you are going to be required to develop a profile about your own community. Remember, my community is not like your community. So I know that most of the students, they are getting confused when coming to the issue of a profile. The question is, what is a profile? There are various definitions of profile. For now, I'm going to use Longman's Dictionary's definition. A profile is defined as a description that gives important details about a person, a group of people, or community. Remember, in this module, our mandate is to work with communities. So here we are going to look at the details, the descriptions that gives the important details about the community. When dealing with this one of developing a profile, the most important thing that you must look for, you are not going to assume that you are having a community. As a community worker, you need to go out and look for a community so that you can get the information from that community. When looking for the information about the community, you are going to interview different people. For instance, adults or elders, youth, and even the top people who are found in that community. The first thing, when you develop a profile, you must know the name of the community that you are going to work with. For instance, the old man who was working as a farmer decided to move from where he was working, and he started his own community, and he called that community Karel community. So this is about the history. In short, the history of the community. When dealing with the history, there are 4 questions that you must answer. Those questions, I normally call them the WH questions. Who are they? What are they doing? What are the reasons that made them to be where they are? When did they arrive at that place? Then when coming to, we are going to use the first example of that farmer as an example of drawing the history, developing the history of the community. Who was the first person? The old man who was working at the farm. We can regard him as the leader. The second one, what was the reason that made him to leave? It is because of grief. Remember, he lost his employer, and then he decided to leave the area. But yours might not be the same as this one. It might be that the people that you are looking, or the community that you are looking at, it deals with they are where they are today because they left their first area, their first place, because of drought. Others, it might be because there was war between the group of people in that community, and then they decided to leave. That is when you are answering the question, what now? The last one is when, which is when did they arrive? Remember, the old man left the place after the employer's death. From the history of that community of Karel, the one that was started by the farmer, the person, the old man who was working for the farmer, he left the first place, remember. He now went to the chief to ask him for a space where he can build or start his own family. And he was now not accommodated by the chief. But at the end, the chief decided to give him a piece of land far from the community. And he brought his own family there. They were the first ones to arrive there. When they arrived there, it happens that the old man started to use his skill. Remember, he was working and the employer is no more. But now, here is the old man with his own family, and for the family to survive, there must be something. He decided now to go on and on with his own skill that he learned from his employer. He now contributed towards his family by making money out of the vegetables. Remember, he decided to he started by giving the vegetables to other people. That means that even those that were not receiving those vegetables, they end up coming to him to buy the vegetables. He was no longer employed. We can say he was self-employed now. He was a farmer. We are still busy busy with the profile even here, but we are now concentrating on the livelihood of this man. He's now busy with vegetables. He's selling the vegetables. He's also a farmer, and he's now having a social relationship with members of other communities. And I think they even have their way of communicating, like having the same language, because we can see that they were attracted to him. You can't be attracted to a person if you don't hear his language. So when coming to your profile, remember, when developing this profile, you are done now with the history. It's good that you should have clarity about the history. Here we are dealing with the economic activities. The first one, it was because the farmer was busy now farming, and he ended up being selling the vegetables. The second one, he got a relationship with other community members. And that relationship is about the social interaction. Even the community that you are going to develop that you are going to concentrate on is the one you are going to get the relationship amongst members of that community. Are they having the traditional practices? Remember, this man, he brought his own children, and I think some of them were beautiful girls, and men or boys from other communities. They fell in love with these girls, and they end up having the traditional practices of paying lobola, giving lobola to this old man. And I wonder how the old man was feeling by that time. He was no longer in grief. And the group again, we said, because they moved, other villagers, they moved from their community and they come and reside with the old man. It means then there was a relationship between the two groups, and they've got a way of entertaining each other. I'm not sure about this old man, whether he was a Motswana or a Zulu or a Xhosa, but I think he was also having his own traditional way of doing things. And the community, it was also having its own way of entertainment. And for instance, because we said there were adults and youth in that community, it means they were also having their own political parties. I don't know the names of their political parties, but because they were different people, they might have different affiliations of different political parties. Then we also talked about the population. When designing, when developing your profile, you also need to include the population. Remember, the population of this community, it was too small from the onset, but at the end, it was too big. 10,000 people, 5,000 people. Your number, your population is not going to be the same as your friend's population. Because remember, here we are dealing with different communities, and each and every community, it has its own character. The population is made up of elders. The population is made up of disabled people. The population again is made up of women and men, including youth and children. When dealing with the population, you will check the number of that population. For amongst this group, which one is more dominant? Is it youth, elders, disabled people, or people who are, let's say, maybe small children? And the other thing that you must check the type of resources that are available in that community. I think because this man, He was now the leader of this community. He was able even to get the resources for his community. Like, for instance, we said there were small children. I think they also needed resources, and the institutions like schools, whether it was a primary school or a high school, I'm not yet sure. But with you, you will be sure because you will be there at the community. Remember, you can't develop your profile, the profile of the community, without being closer to the community. And there's no one who is going to have the same profile with the same person, because they are collecting information from different people. Others will collect it from the rural areas, others will collect it from the urban areas. That's why I'm saying it's not going to be the same. Others will be using soil as their resources. Others will be using minerals as their resources. Others will be using wild animals as their resources. And remember, for the first time I said when we were talking about the economic activities, others, like this old man, he was now a farmer. And with your community, some of them might be drivers, others will be what? You can give so many examples that you want. And when you talk about your population, remember it must be inclusive, because there's no community with elders only. Community is made up of different people. Those that are learned, those that are not learned, those that are employed, those that are unemployed, some of them are self-employed. But let me tell you something. Each and every community, it has its own challenges. Each and every community, it has its own challenges. Like what? Unemployment is one of the challenges. Poverty is an example of a challenge that the community can have. Overcrowdedness too. Lack of houses. There are so many things that you can mention as the challenges, but it is only going to be controlled by the type of information that you are collecting. Look at the type of houses that they are staying in or living in. Some of them, they are living in big houses, mansions. Others, they are attending Model C schools, whereas this others group, they are attending schools under the trees. That's why I'm saying it is necessary that when you do your profile, when you write your profile, it should be an original information. And for you to get the original information, you will have to interview elders and children and youth members from that community. Thank you.